Liminal spaces are a hot topic right now. While mundane, they can actually be really cool. Now you might wonder, what is a liminal space? Well, according to the book The 99% Invisible City, liminal spaces are a transition point. Architecturally speaking, it's usually from a public space to a private space. But on the internet, it's actually taken on a broader meaning of just weird spaces that might feel dreamy, a place that you're not meant to spend much time in, and feel strange when you do. The internet has also taken it to a rather existential place, especially when it uses words like unease or nostalgia or surrealism to describe liminal spaces. I personally like them because they feel like a real life loading screen. Like, you know, when a game, instead of just showing you a traditional loading screen, plays this cutscene of sorts as it loads up new assets into the scene you're walking into. That is the space that feels fun to explore and to closely examine. And that's what we're talking about today, those liminal spaces, specifically in Spider-Man. One of those architectural aspects that is a transition is a fire escape. Now, they're meant to get you out of a building in the case of an emergency. In Spider-Man Remastered, they serve as a fun way to interact with the building with some cool web slinging tricks. IRL, however, they're not always that sturdy. In fact, in the 1700s, they were very different from what we've come to expect out of a fire escape. They were usually mobile ladders on carts that were carried around by firefighters. Then later on in the 1800s, New York was becoming increasingly flammable, and the city started requiring some form of emergency egress. Naturally, the Lord of the Lands wanted to keep it cheap, and they entertained ideas like ropes with baskets, parachute hats. One person even was mentioned as using archers to shoot arrows with ropes to help people fleeing from the building shimmy down, kind of like invading a medieval castle, but in reverse. Naturally, landlords landed on the fire escape as a way to allow that egress from their buildings. However, even this means of escape had a lot to improve on. After a fire at the Triangle Shirtwaist Company broke out, employees who were packed into the 9th floor were forced to use a fire escape. However, that fire escape collapsed, and in total, 146 people died in that tragedy. Now, after this, it did lead to the powers that be to re-examine traditional fire escapes and led to improvements to help with emergency egress, especially in large buildings. Now, the fire escape has been absorbed into the building, and you might notice fire escapes still exist today. Many of them have been grandfathered, and they simply exist as a relic of a more flammable past. You can actually visit this building that I'm talking about. It's called the Brown Building, formerly known as the Ash Building, named after its owner, Joseph J. Ash, which, as I'm describing this, I realize how unfortunate of a name that was for the Brown Building. Now, in-game, this building is on Park Alley and Broadway, right next to Washington Square, while in our universe, it's located on Green and Washington. I think it's interesting how this building exists in the game. The Triangle Shirtwaist Fire of 1911 is a really interesting historical event, and it's actually an interesting read, so I recommend you just read up on it. I'm not going to explore it any further in this video, but it's a interesting piece of history. And I think that exploring these little details in a game are a fun way to learn about actual things from history. Really, this video game, or this instance, is a good example on how games are just as nuanced as an art piece or as a piece of literature. Really, it deserves to exist in that same creative space. Okay, we really strayed away from regular liminal spaces, but that's because we're talking about actual liminal spaces, a place of transition. That's what a fire escape really is. Less liminal in the dreamy sense, but I guess if you have ever spent time on a fire escape, it can be dreamy, surreal. It gives you a unique view from the outside of a building that you don't usually get to enjoy. Really, it might give you the feeling that we can imagine Spider-Man feels hanging off the side of a structure like that. This episode got a little too educational. Let's wrap it up with some gameplay to remind us that Spider-Man is all about saving people. Anyways, I'm thinking about doing a few more videos like this one, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. Ali the Algo likes it when you do that, and so do I.